waited to meet Marilyn Chin. Before long, I saw a very hip, long-haired, leather-jacketed, mini-skirt-clad Chinese-American woman rushing toward me. Marilyn? Catherine? That was my first introduction to Marilyn Chin, the person. I had long read and taught her poetry, but now I was going to interview the poet and get to know the woman. This evening, in another San Diego venue, I introduced this poet to you. Some of you may know her poetry, know her, or know her fiction. Marilyn was born in Hong Kong, but grew up in Oregon. Her poetry gives personal voice to the politics of immigration, exile, cultural displacement, oppression, and assimilation, without reducing those issues only to the personal. As her poetic voice unravels the complexity and consequences of the process of assimilation, Marilyn interweaves other concerns: loss, cultural history, silence, family relationships, sadness, sacrifice, gender, sex, joy, love, and life. And I have a feeling we hear a lot about the sex and the joy tonight. A deep commitment to the poetry of activism propels most of her work, sometimes leading a blatant political overtone to a poem, at other times juxtaposing the political and the personal in startling ways. Marilyn's 3 published volumes of poetry, Dwarf Bamboo, The Phoenix Gone, The Terrace Empty, and Rhapsody in Plain Yellow, and her forthcoming volume, Hard Love Province, which will come out in June, draw on both Chinese and Western poetic traditions. And her novel, The Revenge of the Mooncake Vixen, draws on, revises, and in some cases perverts these very traditions. Marilyn has won numerous awards for her poetry, including the United Artists Foundation Fellowship, the Radcliffe Institute Fellowship at Harvard, the Rockford Foundation Fellowship at Bellagio, 2 NEAs, the Stenger Fellowship, the Penn Josephine Miles Award, 5 pushcart prizes, a Fulbright Fellowship to Taiwan. Like many of us in this room, Marilyn also teaches. She teaches in the MFA program at San Diego State and also serves as mentor on the international faculty of the City University of Hong Kong's low residency MFA program, the first of such programs in Asia. Since my first meeting with Marilyn 8 years ago, I have benefited from her generous spirit, her laughter. I have watched her with her students, with my students actually. I have seen her poetry and fiction spark response in a first-generation college student of color. I have delighted in the images on the pages of her poetry collections. I have thrilled to the sound of her voice reading her words, and I am pleased, honored, and humbled to introduce you to Marilyn Chin.
I always begin with the self-introduction of sorts, how I got that name in Essay on Assimilation. And I thought I would not do that this evening. However, I think Chris said, please read that poem. So I'm going to begin with that poem. Okay, it's called How I Got That Name, an Essay on Assimilation. I am Marilyn Chin. Oh, how I love the resoluteness of that first person singular, followed by that stalwart indicative of be, without that uncertain ing of becoming. Of course, the name had been changed somewhere between Angel Island and the sea, where my father, the paper son, in the late 1950s, obsessed with a bombshell blonde, transliterated Maylene to Marilyn. But nobody dare question his initial import. We all know lust drove men to greatness, not goodness, not decency. And there I was, a wayward pink baby, named after some tragic white woman, swollen with gin and Nembutal. My mother couldn't pronounce the R. She dubbed me #1 female offshoot for brevity. Henceforth she will live and die in sublime ignorance, flanked by loving children, the kitchen deity, where my father dithers, a tomcat in Hong Kong trash, a gambler, a petty thug who bought a chain of chop suey joints in Piss River, Oregon, with bootleg Gucci cash. Nobody dare question his integrity, given his nice, devout daughters and his bright, industrious sons, as if filial piety were the standard by which all earthly men were measured. Oh, how trustworthy our daughters, how thrifty our sons, how we managed to fool the expert education statistics and demography. We're not very creative, but not adverse to rote learning. Indeed, they can use us. But the model minority is a tease. We know you are watching now and refuse to give you any. Oh, bamboo shoots, bamboo shoots. The further west we go, we'll hit east. The deeper down we'll dig, we'll find China. History has turned its stomach on a black polluted beach where life doesn't hinge on that red wheelbarrow. But whether or not a new lover in that final episode of Santa Barbara will lean over Sunday candle and call us a bitch. Oh Lord, where have we gone wrong? We have no inner resources. Then one redolent spring morning, the great patriarch Chin peered down from his kiosk in heaven and saw that his descendants were ugly. One had a squarish head and nose without a bridge, nose profile long and knobbed as a gourd. A third, the sad, brutish one, may never marry. And I, his least favorite, not quite boiled, not quite cooked, a plump pomfret simmering in my juices, too listless to fight for my people's destiny. To kill without resistance is not slaughter, says the proverb. So I wait for imminent death. The fact that death is also metaphorical is testament to my lethargy. So here lies Marilyn Chin, married once or twice to so-and-so, a Lee and a Wong, granddaughter of Jack the Patriarch and brooding Su Lin Fong, daughter of the virtuous Yukun Wang and Gigi Chin the infamous, sister of a dozen, cousin of a million, survived by everybody and forgotten by all. She was neither white, black, nor white, neither cherished nor vanquished, just another squatter of her own bamboo grove, minding her poetry. When one day heaven was unmerciful and a chasm opened where she stood, like a jaws of mighty white whale, or the maw of a metaphysical Godzilla swallowed her whole. She not flinched, nor writhed, nor fret about the afterlife, but stayed, solid as wood, happily, a little gnawed, tattered, mesmerized by all that was lavished upon her, and all that was taken away. Oh, my students are here, you all get straight A's. They're wearing the Halloween costumes. Okay, so that was a manifesto of sorts. So I've been writing these short manifestos all my life, and so that one, I began with that one. It's a hybrid form. We've been working with hybrid forms. That's a poem. That's autobiography. That is a performance, and that is an essay, and that's a manifesto dash ars poetica, right? But 2 years ago I wrote various pieces called Brown Girl Manifestos, and this one is called is kind of a flash manifesto, and I wrote this as a kind of thing I like to bring to stare down people at conferences, you know. So this is called Brown Girl Manifesto. A performative utterance. Each utterance of the first person I, as the speaking subject, combats the history of oppression which extends to me. Through the spoken word, the I critiques, questions, corrects, annotates, examines, mocks, derides, offends, and talks back at the prevailing culture. When I perform my poetry, the I speaks not only as the poet, but also through enacted difference, through a body inscribed by historical determinations: brown, dirty, immigrant, illegal, alien, girl, unwanted, illegitimate, and I, as the brown girl body who faces her audience, stands there vulnerable to the perennial history of pre-misconceptions, racism, and hatred. If we think the brown girl figure is no longer viewed by historical determinations, then we are in denial of our role in her existence in the global situation. 2. Who is this I that is not I, the sex that is not one? She who is not allowed to speak, like the old world feminist that I am, who represents something larger than myself. Why should I not have ambitions for an art that is political? Should I not want to speak on behalf of the marked brown girl, the veiled subaltern from the unholy lands, the girl who is burned for a better dowry, the 24-year-old undocumented worker whom you both need and despise, who died in the desert south of Dayton, Arizona, traveling across the border, the nameless girl amongst thousands toiling in the factories of Guangdong, a nameless girl murdered near the Maquiladoras in Juarez, the perennial girl orphan, starving, crying, pushed from refugee camp to refugee camp. The most annoying of all, she is also your immigrant neighbor, the one with a screaming baby on her hip, the one you despise most of all, because her very existence, her moving into the neighborhood, has brought down the value of the real estate. 3. The speaking subject is always an oppositional voice. If the majority says, no dogs allowed, she says, grrr, and wags her tail and bites the man in the ass and won't let go. If the majority says, we don't want you, immigrant, we'll send you back, the speaking subject writes on the wall of Angel Island, I shall stay firm, I shall endure, I shall not be erased. 4. Artistic subjectivity. The I authorizes the first-person subjectivity and enables artistic expression, which differs from autobiography. A brown girl subject is not necessarily for sociological or ethnographical inquiry. My grandmother is in the kitchen making dumplings. Yum, you say. What are the ancient ingredients? Better yet, what ancient rites are you conducting? Don't you perform ancient rites in the kitchen? Let me bring my notepad and my camcorder. This is important research. I'll get tenure. But wait a minute, this is poetry. My grandmother is in the kitchen making dumplings out of General Iwatane Matsui's liver, and we have now entered the realm of magical realism. Perhaps you better not stay in that kitchen, get the hell out of there. Why should Maxine's cutting the frenum be forever subjected to the litmus test of an authentic autobiographical, ethnographical experience when even Gregor Samsa gets to speak? Why is a cockroach a speaking subject, laconic nonetheless, decrying mother, mother? The ethnographers never question whether or not he is a descendant of other cockroaches. But seriously, why should you get to imagine yourself as Luke Skywalker? And I can't imagine myself as the woman warrior. Aren't Chinese girls allowed to have a surreal imagination? 5. The speaking subject is also the lyric poet. Am I making art, or am I only producing material for your ethnographical interest? Am I not also spilling out sonnets, palindromes, epigrams, rondeaus, haiku, renku, ballades, dreju, fu, huzzos, prophetic hallucinations, and all the sweet and wild, brilliant variations of the above? Am I not the poet of witness? Do I not take after Nellie Sachs and Paul Celan, trying to describe the horrors of the Holocaust, meanwhile inventing a new lyric which questions the possibility, impossibility of poetry after the most heinous episodes of history. Am I not a descendant of Chuyuan, whose lyric intensity caused him to drown himself in the Milo River in protest, and the descendant of the courageous feminist poet Children, who recited a poem on the path to her own beheading? 6, a call for unity. Brothers and sisters of the revolution, contemplate for a moment, are we really now in a post-identity, post-racial, post-feminist era, and all is groovy and colorblind, equal work, equal pay, equal justice for all? We're all in the second term of the first Black presidency in the United States. Are we therefore all emancipated and free? Do we all have a stake in the American dream? Do we all have a place at the table? Or do we still have to cook it for you, serve it, and wipe the floor after you too? And sit quietly in the dark kitchen while you delight in that lush banquet? Why am I still standing here trying to answer to you, hegemonic economy, modern philosophers, po-biz mongers, treacherous cognoscenti, cultural flesh traders, fascist estates, trickster patriarchs, pallid leaseholders, cleaver-wielding grandmothers, erstwhile dreamers, readers, overlords? Yeah, you are never fucking satisfied. I'm teaching a flash fiction class, so that is kind of a flash manifesto. It's 2 pages long, so this is a Brown Girl manifesto as well, but this one is hip-hop inflected. I was informed by some of my wild hip-hop students, so I'm back and wrote these heavily stressed rhythmic pieces, and this one's called Brown Girl Manifesto 2, and it also mimics the cacophonic Cantonese love poem form. Brown Girl Manifesto 2. Metaphor, metaphor, my pestilential aesthetic, a tsunami powers through my mother's ruins. Delta, delta, moist loins of the republic succumb to the low-lying succubus dew. Flagpole, flagpole, my father's polemics, a bouquet of fuck you bastard flowers. Fist me, embrace me with your phantom limbs, slay me with your slumlord panegyrics. Flip over so I can see your pastoral mounts, your sword slightly parting from the scabbard. Girl skulls piled like fresh baked loaves, a foul wind scours my mother's cadaver. Or ornamental, oriental, techno impresarios, I am your parlor rug, your chamber bauble. Love me, stone me, I am all yours. Pound, pound, my father's Ezra. Freedom, freedom, fragile, tooting girls, dancing on the roof of the Bahia Doras. I'll read a series of poems. This one's in the new book called Hard Love Province, and they're killer poems. They're really sexy and in your face. So. We've been writing haiku in my poetry class, in my MFA class, and yeah, the haiku form is much beloved and much reviled, but yeah, every time I teach them, we have a great time, and there were some really wild pieces in the last class. They're X-rated, so so I'm gonna read these. They're really bad girl, libidinous haiku. Actually, I wrote them at an artist colony, and there were a bunch of bearded types who were sitting in a corner. You know, they were composers, I think, and they were having a haiku party without me. So I thought I'd go back and write some bad girl, anti-Zen, libidinous haiku. And can we call them haiku if they're not Zen-inspired? I don't know. Maybe we'll just call them 17-syllable things. So I try to work with poly voice stress pattern and avoid that 575 caesura pattern. 25 haiku. 100 red fire ants scouring the white peony. Fallen plum blossoms return to the branch. You sleep, then harden again. Cuttlefish in my palm stiffens with rigor mortis. Boy toys can't love. Neighbors, barn, grass mat, crickets, blue boy, trowel handle, dress soaked in mud. Iron-headed mace, double-studded halberd, slice into emptiness. Oh fierce, oh goose, tie me to 2 wild elephants, tear me in half. Oh my swarthy herder, 2 humpback twin, drive me the long distance. Forceps, tongs, bushy, whip, flanks, scabbard, stirrup, goads, distaff, wither, owl. Black-eyed Susan's, Queen Anne's lace, bounty of cyclamen, moan paths erupt. Gaze at the charred hills, the woe-begone kiosk, we are all God's hussies. I have not fondled the emperor's lapdog, whose name is Black Muzzle. Urge your horses into the mist-swilled Galilee, oh sweet Bedlamite. Her Majesty's running up the jewel stairs to find the pleasure dome. Ancient pond, the frog jumps in and in and in the deep slap of water. The frog jumps into the ancient pond, she says, no, I am not ready. Coyote cooked his dead wife's vagina and fed it to his new wife. I plucked out 3 white pubic hairs and they turned into flying monkeys. Let's do it on the antimacassar, on the antimacassar. Little Red drew her teeny pistol from her basket and said, eat me. Chimera, Madame Pol Pot grafting a date tree onto a date tree. His unwieldy appendage, his mutinous henchman grazed my pink cheeks. He on top now changes to bottom. Goddess welcomes her devotee. Fish, fish, foul, foul, mock me, Mistress Beancurd, I am both duck and essence. Sing, sing, little yellow blight, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Don't touch him, bitch. We're engaged, and besides, he's wearing my nipple ring. The last haiku, I swear to God, I heard it, I heard one of my students say it into her cell phone. It's a foul haiku. There you go. My students wrote some really nasty ones too, and so it's a fun, haiku parties are fun, This one is called Mao's Corpse. I taught in Beijing for a semester, and I went to the mausoleum with, and of course there was Mao's, which showcased Mao's corpse, and it was gruesome. This poem also references a famous Chinese poem after Su Tongpo, and I called it. I wrote a variety of sonnets, and I call them sonnet-nese because they're half sonnets and half Chinese lyrics, half Fu. This one references one poem by a Sutton Paul that goes, "Ugly wives and bitchy concubines, they are one and the same. The blacker the black coffee, the more I want 2 cups. All I get in Beijing is shit Nescafe, sugary muck. Beauty, ugliness, self-same skyline, obscured by smog. Imperial killjoy drunk on his back, can't get it up. I love socialist architecture, flabby husbands, alcoholic hard bucks. The sadder they get, the more I love them, I can't get enough. You could be a rich corpse or a poor corpse. Stuff all your cavities with jade and river pearls, goldy, powdery gold snuff. The robbers will pluck them like fragrant florets. Silly boy, eyes closed, puckered, you wait for love. Gripe about how life has cheated you, of fame, of riches. End of a violent century, you are nostalgic for blood. My dear, we are staring at the void, at the edge of American-ness. There are a lot of children's lit people here. A lot of my friends are here who teach in the department at San Diego State in the great children's lit department. I like to write in children's voices, so I wrote a series of Hybern inspired by Basho, but they're in children's voices. And instead of the Hybern being punctuated by a haiku, I punctuate them with a famous American verse. And of course, there's also a weird pun in here, a silly pun in here. So it's called Study Hall Deterritorialized, or Gwendolyn Brooks. The brown boy hits me, but says he is sorry. The brown girl, his sister, says it's because he likes me. I say, yeah, he likes me. Well, I hate him. The black girl pinches me, says, scaredy cat, tattletale, little pussy. I dare you to hit back. The white girl grabs my Hello Kitty purse and spills my milk money. I karate chop her arm. The white boy says, my father says that your father's egg rolls are made of fried rat penises. I answered, yep. My father says that the reason why his egg rolls are made of fried rat penises is because Americans are weirdos and like to eat fried rat penises. The black girl laughs deep from her gut and high-fives me. Just as I am redrawing the map, my little fresh off the boat cousin from Malaysia starts weeping into her pink shawl like a baby. Wah, 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 wah. The white girl muffles her ear. Can't you shut her up? I say, don't cry, little cousin. It's not as bad as it seems. It's verse. I point to the window and magically, to entertain us, 2 fat pigeons appear cooing on the sill. The boy is sitting on top of the girl, trying to molest her. She is wobbling, shuffling, pirouetting under his weight. He is pecking a red bald spot on her skinny nape and singing, we real cool, we real fool. Finally, we all laugh as one, laughing and laughing at God's beloved creatures. Behind this spectacle, against all odds, from the west, a strong explosion of sun bullies through the big gray loogie of a cloud. So I'm going to read a little tale, and it's called Fox Girl. I think Catherine's going to give a little lecture on, give a little paper on it Sunday morning. But the fox girl is a trickster. She's a she's a very popular myth in China, Japan, and Korea. And the one I'm referencing is a fox demon who sexes up a poor, pale scholar and depletes him of his essence during his exams. And so, and also this fox girl is autobiographical. It's about a certain girl who got her MFA from the University of Iowa. If you get me drunk tonight, I'll name names. There was a so-and-so Mr. Famous poet who had a bad reputation around the country for sexually harassing graduate students. The usual fare was that he would go on a college book tour, get stark raving drunk, and chase dark, exotic-looking female students. Yes, he preferred the exotic ones, and try to lure them to his hotel room. He was as well known for his gluttonous and voracious appetite for gourmet food, drink, and lechery as he was for his poetry. Faux pastorals with shepherdesses and woolly sheep all over the green hillocks of Arcadia. Because he was so famous, nobody bothered to tell him that groping female graduate students was no longer cool. Nor in his acclaim did he realize that policies had been put in place in universities for such behavior. He could actually get fired. Likewise, nobody bothered to tell him that his poetry was no longer relevant. The great Norton anthology in the sky had already replaced his entries with a younger, hipper, Croatian Navajo surrealist. One day, he was on the last leg of yet another reading tour. He landed on a Midwest airstrip near a famous writing program, surrounded by bean and cornfields and majestic hog-feeding operations. A young graduate student on research fellowship was assigned to drive Mr. Famous Poet around. She was to pick him up from the airport, take him around town to get his fill of peanuts and Bombay gin, deliver him to a local bistro for supper with other writers and graduate students. Finally, her last task of the evening was to deliver him in one piece, drunk or sober, to the university to give his poetry reading. The graduate student was a little Chinese girl born in Hong Kong and raised in San Francisco, around 5'2", a bit thin but spunky, with a confident spring to her walk. Presently, she was writing a critique on Brecht's alienating effects in Chinese acting, and was finalizing an experimental poetry thesis filled with reverse fables in which little girls speak in the personas of the most hapless and vilified of animals. With activist zeal, she wrote compassionately on behalf of the pea-brained stegosaurus, the doomed dodo, and common roadkill. She mocked up an entire new vocabulary to sustain the wealth of sounds and utterances foreign to human ears. Almost as soon as she introduced herself to Mr. Famous Poet at the airport, he grabbed her breasts and said, "Why don't you and I ditch the rest of them and go to my hotel room?" The student turned beet red in the face and said, "Okay, Mr. Famous Poet, whatever you say. But in exchange, you have to pull some strings to get me a tenured teaching job." Preferably in California. He said, "Of course, my influence is long and wide and reaches all the way to even California." But as soon as they both entered the car, the girl started yelping and shaking as if she were possessed by a demon. Her long black hair volumed up into a fluffy red coat. She grew a perfect little perky pink snout and a huge, magnificent tail. Before his very eyes, she turned into a beautiful red fox. She quickly leapt onto his lap, rubbed against his chest, and climbed on his shoulders and bit his ear with a seductive little growl. He was mesmerized by her. Her wild fur and musky perfume gave him an urgent hard-on. A violent rush of passion shot into his groin. He was so turned on that he could barely feel the sperm percolating on the great bulb of his penis. He had never fucked a graduate student fox before. Never a wild animal. A few tamed lambkins and his own cocker spaniel, but never a wild animal. So he said, hold on, little red fox, and went to the trunk to get condoms from his briefcase. One cannot know what kind of sexually transmitted diseases are harboring inside fox vaginas, he thought. When he got back to his car with his ribbed Trojans, the fox suddenly transformed into another creature. Her beautiful red fur suddenly turned stark black. In one bold stroke, a brilliant white stripe raced down her back as if it were a dividing line on the highway. The fox on his lap had suddenly turned into a 200-pound gargantuan skunk. And before he could throw her off, she raised up her skirt of a tail and sprayed a foul yellow varnish all over him. This poet really stinks. I am not being so much literary, but literal. He smells like he hasn't taken a bath for months. He professes that he is writing an epic, not just a personal epic of the likes of Whitman, which he deems as an inferior kind, but a classical epic of the likes of Homer, filled with gods and heroes and full regalia. Henceforth, he has no time for taking a shower and doing things that ordinary mortals do. He shall, for the rest of his life, traipse around his apartment wearing a tattered terry cloth robe, inhaling hand-rolled cigarettes and drinking endless goblets of Bombay gin spritzers. With such modest talent and penis size, he shall spend his last days wrestling the ghosts of Homer. Much sadness befalls this lecherous poet. He can no longer partake in groping young female mouths because none could stand to be close to him. Nobody invites him to give readings because his epic is boring. The Pulitzer Prize shall elude him. The Nobel Committee shall opt for a mesmerizing lyric poet from the Saharan desert who writes in Swahili. One fine day, as he is contemplating a poem and delighting in a jar of sweet pickles, and as he is looking out his office window to the lawn, a beautiful little fox saunters by. Her fluffy tail arches way up like the headdress of a proud warrior. At first, he feels a small renaissance in his pants. Then he is stricken with an overwhelming fear and repulsion, putting to flight the triggering aftertaste, weirdly sweet and bitter, of nostalgia.
So thank you very much, Marilyn. Thank you, Ray. This is wonderful. We're going to have a Q&A for about 15 minutes, and let me turn these mics on. Take a second to warm up.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, and Steve and Catherine, if you want to come up, I'll let you guys moderate. And then I just wanted to announce that after our Q&A, we're going to have that Marilyn and Ray have kindly agreed. Thank you both so much. That was wonderful. They've agreed to sign some books. And then after that, around 6:45 or 7, or whenever you can get over there at the Wave House, you can see the roller coaster out the door. If you go out the parking lot and turn right on the main road, you keep going to the beach, on the left is the Wave House. So we're going to have our reception there until 8:30. I hope you all can make it. And I hope you both can come on over. Grab a jacket. It might be kind of chilly. because we're outside. So thank you both so much. Maybe we can have some questions.